Ninth chords. These are some of my favorite chords from major to minor because there's a lot of different voicings. The more notes you have in the chord, the more options that you have. Now, I'm going to introduce you to something new called polychords. Okay, there's polychords and there's monochords. Really, mono means it's only incorporated of one chord. All right, poly means that the chord is consisted of more than one chord. So you have two chords put together to make one chord. That would be considered a polychord. All right, so that's really what ninth chords are. They're polychords. They're a mixture of two different chords, two different triad chords at that, to make one chord. So let's talk about the C major 9. And remember, starting from basically the ground up, the foundation, you have to start with the root chord, which will be the 1, 3, and the 5. In this particular case, let's look at that. It would be C, E, and G. That's our 1, 3, and a 5, right? So then from here, we have to keep building, we have to keep extending the chord. And all we're doing is adding the 7th, the major 7th. Remember, there's two different 7th. There's the major 7th and there's a dominant 7th. In this particular case, we'll be adding the major 7th. Then from here, we would keep on extending it and add the 9. Now, as a shortcut, so you don't always have to count, always remember that the 2 is always going to be your 9. In any key, no matter what key it is, if you want to play a 9 chord, your 9 is always going to be your 2. And if you always remember that you're adding the 7th and the 9th. So if you know that you're adding the 7th and the 9th, and the concept that I explained is that if you want to know what your major 7th is going to be, it's going to be a half step away from your root. So if we're playing a C major 9, C is our root, then the 7th will be right here. And then the 9th is always going to be the 2. So here it is right here, all right? So we got the root chord, and then we have the major 7th, and then we have the 9th. Now remember, I talked about polychords, and I introduced you to that, which are two chords that are mixed together to make one. So if we look at this major 9 chord, what chords do you see? All right, let's look at it. Right here, that's a C major chord, all right? And then if we look at now, that's a G major chord. So with any major chord, or with any major 9 chord, always remember that you would add the 1 and the 5, okay? This is going to be considered built upon the 1 and the 5. So if you want a C major 9, you're going to involve C and G. Those are the two chords that you're going to look at. But what you have to identify is what type of chords you're going to mix together. So we know it's going to be some type of C major chord and some type of G major chord. But major 9s, you're mixing two major chords together, all right? It's going to be the 1 and the 5. So we got the C major chord and we have the G major chord. And this forms the C major 9, all right? And this is called a polychord. Why? Because we have two major chords mixed together to make one. All right, so with those concepts in line, but if we go to the key of F, how would we find a F major 9 chord? Okay, what's the 1? The 1 is F. What's the 5? It's C. So all you would do is mix together a F major chord with a C major chord. And if you do that, here's your F major chord. Here's your C major chord. Here's your F major 9. It's that simple, all right? And it works for any key. So that's one way that you can do it, or you can do it the technical way and count. Add the 1, 3, and a 5, and then add the 7th, which remember I said is always going to be a half step away from the root. And then the 9 is always going to be the 2, okay? All right, so that's another way you can do it, but just the poly way is an easier way to just, do it real quick. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can voice these chords, and I'm going to go back to C to use as an example. Now, one way that I like to voice the chord is by, the first thing I do is I look at the notes that are in the chord, okay? And we're looking at the C major 9 right now. So we have C, E, G, B, and D. Now, what you can do is play D, right hand. All right? So it's kind of like playing the G major chord with that E, which will be an E minor 7. So it's kind of like playing an E minor 7th with an E minor chord in your left hand. So basically, the third would be E, and I think like this, okay? I'm gonna play E minor chord on my left hand. I'm gonna play E minor 7th in my right. So if you mix those two chords together, that gives you a different voicing of the same C major 9, I'm sorry. It's just a different approach to thinking of how to voice the chord. So this is a chord, a voicing I like to use a lot. Or you can just play it like this. You don't always have to have the root note, which is C, in the chord, the same way that I explained it for major 7 chords, because for some reason, it just takes away from the quality of the sound. Like, it creates a lot of tension. And, you know, if you want stuff to sound pretty and everything, you don't really want that in your chord. So when we talk about different voicings, you know, 9 times out of 10, you want to leave the root note out and just incorporate every other note. So since we have C, E, G, B, and D in the chord, leave the C out. Okay, and that's one basic way to play the chord. So now it's like we have an E minor 7th over C. It's a different approach on how to think about the chord, but it's still a C major 9. But as you can see, it looks like an E minor 7 in my right hand. All right, so it doesn't matter what inversion you play it in, that still gives you a C major 9 chord. Now you can even build upon this, and if you want to turn this into a 2-hand chord voicing, one thing I do, remember I said we're playing, it's kind of like playing an E minor 9, I'm sorry, E minor 7 over C. What you would do is play the E minor in your left hand and play the E minor 7 in your right. So it's like combining 2 E minor chords, one just an E minor root chord, and then the other an E minor 7 chord in your right. And that gives you this particular voicing. Now, the E minor is kind of based off of the third, okay? So if you're in any other key and you want to figure out a different voicing, all you have to do is identify what the third would be. And let's look at F. We keep going from C to F, so let's keep doing that. Okay, so if we're in the key of F and we want to learn this voicing really quick, okay, what's the third of F? The third of F is A, okay? So we will play an A minor chord, or if we want to just learn a basic way of how to play this major 9 chord, remember I said we're doing a minor 7 chord. It looks like we're doing a minor 7 chord in our right hand. So if that's true, then we'll play the A minor 7 in my right hand, okay? And this is based off the third. That's where we get the A minor 7, because A is the third, and you know it's structured from there. So that's a different approach to how to think about it. And just like the other voicing, if we want to learn this voicing a different way, you can play the A minor chord in your left hand and then the A minor 7 chord in your right. All right? So it's just a different approach to thinking, and you can always invert. You can just mix and match A minor chords. You can mix and match the A minor 7 chord and the A minor chord. So either you can play the A minor chord, A minor 7 chord in your right hand, and just the regular A minor chord in your left. That's going to give you this voicing. Or you can switch the roles, and in your left hand play the A minor 7 chord, and in your right hand play the A minor chord, and it's going to give you the same type of effect but a different voicing. So we're combining this polychords, and it's the same thing that we're doing. So if you play the A minor 7 in this inversion, it's going to give you a more of a fuller sound because it's closer to the lower register. And F is still a bass, and remember we're still talking about a F major 9, but it's just a whole different approach on how to look at things. All right, so If we do that, remember we're playing the A minor 7 chord and a regular A minor chord. Doesn't matter what inversion you play, you still have a F major 9. All right, so the same thing works off the C. Let's go back. Remember, I said everything is kind of derived. These voicings are kind of derived from the E, and that's how I think about it. So it's like I'm playing an E minor 7 chord over C, and that's the basic way to look at the C major 9. So if you want to learn different voicings for this too as well, combine the E minor 7 chord and just the regular E minor chord. So in one hand, you can play an E minor 7, and in the other hand, you can play an E minor. It doesn't matter. You can switch roles, but that's how you get different voicings. So if you play the E minor 7 chord in this inversion, and you play the E minor chord in this hand, that gives you a different voicing. If you play like this, that gives you a different voicing. Just keep in mind that all these notes are just a part of the C major 9 chord. But if you look at it from the poly perspective, where it's a combination of chords, it makes things a lot easier, and it makes it easier for you to remember things. So remember, this concept is very simple, and if you study it and apply it to all keys, it's going to work out, and you're going to have a lot of voicings just based on the knowledge of how to combine polychords. Now, just remember this, and this is the concept. Remember, when you're talking about major 9 chords, remember that third. And really, you can either structure it from counting the 1, 3, 5, 7th, and 9th, or you can do it by combining 2 chords. Remember, the major 1, the major 5. Okay, that's another way to do it. So combining the major 1 and the major 5. So in C, it would be a C major chord plus a G major chord. All right. Now, when you talk about voicing this chord differently, remember that you can take the root out of the chord because it causes a lot of tension, and it just takes the prettiness away. So if you move the root out the chord, because it should be in the bass. If that's if that's the type of chord you're playing, it's going to be in the bass. It's going to be in the chord, not necessarily in the chord up here. But if the bass is playing that note, then it's still in the chord. So basically, just know that it's still in the chord. So the other concept that I showed you, if you want to learn different voicings, is that identify the third. And the basic way to play it would be just knowing that you're playing some type of E minor 7th, or whatever your third is, you will be playing a minor 7th in your right hand, and then the bass will be your root. Okay? Remember, we took the root out the chord, and it's in the bass. Another approach, when you want to get into two-hand chord voicings, is that using the polychord technique, we're going to mix a minor 7 chord with a minor chord in my right. And it's still going to be based off the third. So if your third is E, you're going to mix a E minor 7 chord in one hand, and then just a regular E minor chord in your right. Or the other hand, whichever chord you choose. But just messing around with that concept will give you tons and tons of voicings, all right?